God's blessings on you today. Again, a reading from St. Luke chapter 6, verses 36 through 42. We read, "Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Jesus also told them this parable. "Can a blind man lead a blind? Will they not both fall into a pit? A student is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Brother, let me take the speck out of your eye,' when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." Thus far the word of the Lord. And again, we have a reading from Dr. Martin Luther, preached in his sermon from 1534 on this text. "Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, poured down, shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye mete withal, it shall be measured to you again." First of all, God has not measured us in wrath. "As I stood alone before God, he measured me graciously." If he were to assess us according to our deserts, we would deserve wrath, disquiet, and all kinds of misery. Would we deserve to have the earth swallow us up as soon as we were born, not to mention the fact that through our entire life we conduct ourselves in such an evil way that we rightly deserve death and hell? But what does God do? He throws out everything that we deserve: anger, disgrace, judgment, death, and hell, and gives us heaven, grace, and freedom from the law's accusation in our bad conscience. He throws out all the deficiencies and guilt and grants us all good things. That certainly means measuring you graciously and richly. But if you thereupon do not measure other people in the same way that God used with you, then do not expect anything else than that as you measure, God will again measure you. You measured without compassion, and God will measure you too without compassion. Before you were in good standing because God had credited it to you with his grace alone. But now, just as you measure without gratitude, just so will you be measured in turn." This is a wonderful sermon, for we see that God places even greater emphasis on service to one's fellow man than service to him. For he, on his part, forgives all sins and does not avenge himself for what we have done wrong to him. On the other hand, if we do wrong to our fellow man, he will be at odds with us and not forgive. We must therefore understand measuring in accordance with our faith, not as we were before coming to faith. Before you came to faith, God did not deal with you according to what you deserved, but according to his grace. He led you to accept his word and promised you forgiveness of sins. That was the first level on which we were measured, as faith was begun in us. Now, because we received such measure from God, he says to us, remember, measure in the same way with other people. If you refuse, then you will experience what you mete out to others. If you have no compassion for them, I will have none for you. If you judge and condemn them, I will likewise judge and condemn you. You strip them of everything, I will do so to you, and leave you with nothing. This is measuring in accordance with faith, because our dear Lord Jesus considers the deeds we do to our fellow men so seriously that he will recall whatever good things he has given us previously, if we refuse to do good to our fellow man. Whoever therefore wants to serve God truly should do for his fellow man as God has done unto him. That means judge not, condemn not, forgive, and gladly give. Be friendly and helpful toward one's fellow man wherever possible. Otherwise, what happened to the servant in Matthew 18 will happen to us. He received nothing but grace. His master freed him and forgave him all his debts. He in turn refused to forgive his fellow man 100 pence or to have patience with him, and he was turned over to the tormentors until he paid all. The fact is that it is not probable that we can successfully and always abide by this rule. We often forget to be merciful. Where we should be friendly, we are angry. Where we should have kind words, we curse. Should it happen that in a given instance we act contrary to Christ's will, let us be careful to guard against the sin of the Pharisee and barge on without conscience. Instead, let us about face. Remember this picture of doing as our Father has done to us and be willing to forget and to forgive. We should not let injustice or unthankfulness make us bitter. Of course, if we are to forgive, then it's also necessary that the individual to be forgiven admit his sin and show contrition. It is not possible for me to forgive the Pope, Cochleus, and other enemies of the word their sin simply because they do not consider it a sin, but consider it their right to persecute our teaching. If, however, they were to recognize their sin and say, we have acted like fools, and will henceforth stop it, then forgiveness of their sins would be in order. If sin is to be forgiven, then it must actually be a sin. Whoever insists he is in the right and will not confess his sins, as Saul did with Samuel, his sin cannot then be forgiven. Whoever he considers himself without sin and to have done what is right. Whoever confesses his sins will find forgiveness. David confessed his sins and said, I have sinned against God. God found it possible to forgive him. God did not find it possible to forgive Saul. Saul claimed that he was right. A false claim of being in the right cannot and should not be forgiven. This is enough for now. Have a blessed